And welcome to 30-Minute Talks, our international hospitality and tourism topics. I'm Dr. Andy Nazarechuk, along with Professor Perry Hobson and Mr. Alan Williams, and each week we host our webinar. And this week we have a very special program. And before we start that program, let us thank our academic partners. We have so many academic partners, and they've been very supportive in many different ways. LPU, the University of Santo Tomas, Sunway University, a new academic partner just a few weeks ago, the Macau Tourism and Hospitality Association, and Healy, the Higher Education Leadership Institute. And our guest speaker is actually from National Kaohsiung Hospitality and Tourism University, and she's the acting head of the International Masters in Hospitality program. So she'll be our guest speaker today, and we'll go through that. Now, just one more reminder, today we will actually be announcing the final winner of the 30-Minute Talks Background Challenge, the program. And the prize for today's program is actually 2,000 pesos. So we're all very excited to see who is going to win the final background challenge. And I know, you can tell Alan was going to try with his. He's very creative in his backgrounds. Perry Hobson is still working on that building. He's going to get that building.
I got to change, Andy. If you're going to tell me like that, I'm going to just have to change my background a bit. I think I'm feeling a little bit more city-like now.
Oh, wow.
Go.
Our background is
That's right.
Appropriate for.
Well, I could hang out with some friends as well.
Good. Thank you for your multi-show background presentation. Today's topic. Today's topic is a very interesting one. Something that we all can appreciate because we all drink coffee and tea, I believe, at some point. But did you know that there's coffee and tea tourism? And today, so we have actually three speakers today. Dr. Chen from National Kaohsiung University is the assistant professor and acting program director of their master's program. And she is the winner of several teaching and research awards, including the 2017 Fran McGuire Excellence in Teaching Award and many other awards. And she also serves as the guest editor of the International Journal of Culture, Tourism, and Hospitality Research. And this is another announcement you'll see later, but she's actually, her and her colleagues are working on a special issue of the opportunities and challenges at the connection of tea, coffee, and tourism. So I know she'll be talking about that later. And her research interests are very interesting. She was telling me about bicycle tourism, coffee tourism, tourist behavior, experience-scape, and experience design. So I'm sure we'll be hearing some of those topics later, someday in the future. But today, we're going to focus on coffee and tea. So with that said, I'm going to ask Dr. Chen to load up her PowerPoint, and you can see this beautiful tea plantation in Taiwan. And she is very, very knowledgeable about coffee and tea tourism, and we're looking forward to hearing her presentation. Dr. Chen, please start your PowerPoint, and we look forward to hearing your presentation today.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you for this great introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Li-HsinChen from IMTH NKUHT in Taiwan. So very nice to meet you online, and it's a great honor and pleasure to be part of this great show. And today I will talking about coffee, tea, and tourism, and also, Professor Joliffe and Dr. Martin will join me to talking about the influence of COVID-19 on coffee and tea tourism, and I hope you can enjoy today's show. So let's start with some fun facts. I believe that many of you have answered this in the pre-show poll. So the first question, do you know what is the most widely consumed beverage around the world? The answer is, a little bit nervous, is tea. Oh, I saw that 42% of participants correctly answer this question. You guys are amazing. Next one, do you know who discovered coffee? The answer is a gold herder in Africa. So that's a 38% of participants correctly answer this one. Congratulations. Next one, do you know the word coffee comes from the Arabic word for what? Is why money or magic? The answer is why? Yes. Final questions. Do you know what kind of tea is known as the champagne of tea? Is oolong or the fireside mocha or Darjeeling? The answer is Darjeeling. Okay, so now we know that coffee and tea is really very important socio-economic crops to our society. So what exactly is their contribution to our world? Well, we cannot ignore its economic benefits. For example, if you can see on the slides, it actually, the share of coffee in total export earning in coffee producing countries has really a significant and positive reflection on their economic growth, especially in developing and these developed countries. And we also cannot ignore their social benefits, because the income generated by coffee tea exportation boost the economic benefit, and also this can be help the coffee farmers and all these tea farmers to have a more stable income and provide a great source of employment opportunity to the entire community, and help them to purchase some valuable property such as lands and houses. However, we cannot ignore there's still some challenges that we need to face in this industry. For example, the cost of production tend to be much more higher than the prices the farmers they receive only for selling fresh leaves or coffee berries. And because, as you can see on the left-hand side of the figure, before the tea go to consumer's house, there's multiple different stakeholders will come into play into the system. So actually, the coffee or the tea farmers, they cannot receive a lot of money directly from the consumers. Some people have come in out some good innovative strategy. For example, they try to include non-traditional players such as like Coca-Cola. They help the very famous ready-to-drink beverage brand called Arizona to distribute their iced tea to other countries. And also, probably you also noticed that, excuse me, Starbucks, they now offer Tivana for their drinks. So they don't only just sell coffees now, they also include the tea products. And we also think about we should promote the health benefit of tea or coffee more to encourage the tea consumption. For example, in Taiwan, there's a study very interesting. It says that the chemical compounds in tea can actually inhibit the coronavirus in human body. And as long as this news release, the tea consumption is like immediately boost in the market. People drink tea like crazy. So we think that promote the health benefit of tea and coffee can actually increase the market. And finally, diversification is a very important strategy. So we can help the farmers to develop such like organic coffee, specialty coffee, and help them to jump into other segment of the market. But also we can try to look at other market. So now we're gonna ask a very important question. Can tourism help? Okay, before I jump into answer this question, I would love to introduce some key terms for you. You may wonder, what exactly is coffee tourism or tea tourism? Well, according to Professor Joliffe, coffee or tea tourism is a tourism involves in travel experiences related to coffee or tea's consumption, history, tradition, production, and culture. And for coffee and tea tourists, who can be counted as a coffee and tea tourist? If you just sit in Starbucks and drinking coffee, or you stop by a tea house and have a tea to go, can you count as coffee and tea tourist? Well, let's see about one's definition. It says that a coffee and tea tourist engaging in coffee tea experiences of all aspects in places that contain unique nature and or culture associated with tea and coffee. So can you count as coffee and tea tourist? As long as you are engaging in that experience, yes, you can count as a coffee and tea tourist. And what place can be counted as a coffee and tea tourism destination? Well, according to Yong, a place where coffee tea is integrated with the nature scenery or the cultural aspect of a community can be seen as a coffee tea tourism destination. And mainly can be divided into two main categories. One is producing destination, another one is consumption destination. So for example, if you visit a very beautiful tea farm or coffee plantation, coffee estate, and they have a really beautiful nature attraction, then it can be counted as one of attraction in coffee producing destination. However, if you visit like a very beautiful modern cafe or tea house, it's not really related to producing, but it's related to consumption. It can also be counted as a coffee tourism destination. Another one is human-made attraction and delivery built for attract tourists. For example, like a tea museum and coffee museum. I know there's a very famous coffee museum in Germany. And also there's a coffee events and festival that can count as a coffee destination. Okay, so let's going back to our original question. Can tourism help? Can tourism add extra value to coffee and tea industry? What is the role of tourism in promoting coffee and tea? We can learn from many good examples here. The first one, let's see. In Tanzania, researchers have found that coffee tour could work as a very important regional development tool because the income generated from coffee tour increase the sources for different community projects. For example, like road maintaining, building new school for kids, and also it creates a lot of business opportunity for minority groups. For example, like women in Tanzania, they can now use the income generated from coffee tourism to create their small business, selling beverage and food to tourists. And now, because the farmers, they know that they need to take good care of their coffee tree, so they can attract more tourists to visit their coffee farm or coffee plantation. And so they won't throw away the garbage or the waste to the land and indirectly improve the environmental awareness. There are other benefits from developing a coffee tour. For example, it can help to marketing Tanzania itself and also increase the awareness of local coffee brands and preserve their culture. So I think, yes, tourism can help, especially in the coffee or tea producing destinations. Well, you may also want to ask how to promote local coffee brand to international markets if I only know in our domestic market. Well, here is a really good example. Cafe Breed, it's very famous in Costa Rica. So originally only sell their coffee to domestic consumers. However, they really want to reach to international market. So they try to incorporate a coffee tour and to open up these export markets because they invite international tourists to visit their coffee farm to engage in all these coffee producing systems. And eventually they collect all the email list, mail list. So now they can sell their coffee product directly to those tourists and develop the brand awareness globally. So this is a good example. And when a previous two examples talking about coffee businesses in the producing destination. And what if your business is in a consumption destination? What strategy you can do to use tourism as a tool to promote your business? Well, don't ignore the power of e-commerce, technology, and internet. So actually you can collaborate with very famous travel and tourism website to promote your local unique cafe or Instagrammable tea houses in a destination. For example, Taiwan has collaborated with this Big 7 travel website This website publish coffee guide, food guide for very often. And so Taiwan cooperate with them, and they publish like the 25 best coffee in Taiwan, the 7 best place for bubble tea. So now a lot of visitors, they visit this website and they check all those cafe, all those tea house on the list, and then go to test them, visit them one by one, and eventually boost the coffee and tea consumption in the destination. And you may also wonder, what is the role of government in promoting coffee and tea tourism? I have another good example in Taiwan as well. So actually, coffee festival and events can be a very great way to promote local culture, local coffee culture or tea culture, to attract tourists to visit a relatively unknown coffee destination. For example, Yunlin in Taiwan originally is not really famous by its coffee product, but since 2002, the government hosts Wuken Coffee Festival, and they try to attract the local farmers, coffee experts to join this event. And eventually, thousands of visitors come from Taiwan and other countries to visit this small town. And suddenly, Wuken Coffee becomes a very, very famous coffee brand in Taiwan. So festival and events can be a good way for government to promote the local unique culture, coffee or tea culture. Okay, I know a lot of tourism planners try to talking about how to attract millennial traveler because they are the mainstream in the market now. And how could we do to attract their attention? Well, if you want to engage in millennial travelers, I would suggest that coffee and tea tourism is a great product in experiential travel and experiential learning markets, because their feature and characters tend to be involved the visitor into the whole coffee and tea experience. And we know that millennial travelers, they don't like just like taking a picture and then go home. They love to fully engage in the local experience. They love to even learn some new skill set to show off on their social media. So in such tour, for example, like a 7-day Taiwan tea tour, the visitor can have some opportunity to engage themselves, to learn what is the beauty of Taiwanese tea, and to learn how to make good cup of tea. So that is a good way to engage millennial travelers. These are all good examples and strategies that we can know. Tourism actually become a very, very important drivers to promote coffee and tea consumption and purchase. And I think there's many other strategies that we can learn from other business. So at this moment, before I jump into the influence of COVID-19, I was wondering any questions from our panelists.
Actually, I was watching your presentation, and I remember my visit to Taiwan, and I love bubble tea. And I know that bubble tea is one of those things that people always, every time I go there, your students always want to buy me bubble tea. So I love bubble tea, and that's a perfect example of creating something that you become famous for. But maybe you can tell us what are the trends and research opportunities in coffee and tourism, because I was not actually aware of all the case studies and the tourism journals that are out there specifically focused on the coffee and tea. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that as I set up our, if you shut off your PowerPoint, I'll set up for the next part.
Yeah, so thank you, Andy, for bringing me these great questions. Actually, coffee and tea research at this moment, particularly very limited to some specific products or tourism experience. But we think that we still need more new research on more systematic and holistic approach and more theoretical sound framework to investigate this phenomena. So that's why I propose a special issue at the International Journal of culture, tourism, and hospitality research about the connection of coffee, tea, and tourism. We hope that we can publish 10 manuscripts that it can be included empirical papers, conceptual paper, case studies to broaden our scope of this phenomena. So if you have manuscript or you have some works that we are happy to review your work, the submission deadline will be before August 31st. And we hope that we can help our industrial partners to see what is the opportunity and challenges behind this interesting topic.
You know, coffee and tea research is very interesting, and there's coffee and tea cafes, destination, local places everywhere in every city. So I'm sure that everyone can relate to the opportunities. And if you look at it as a research opportunity, I think there's some great opportunities for those researchers out there to get some items published. And let's move. If you shut off your PowerPoint, I will turn back on for the next section. Let's see, hold on. Because I know you have some guest speakers for us today.
Yes.
Oh, here's the first one. Go ahead.
Yes. So next section, I will invite a practitioner and a scholar who are all familiar with coffee and tea tourism to join a discussion about how COVID-19 influenced the coffee tea industry and the tourism operation. And the first one, I would love to introduce Dr. Martin Westwood to everyone. So Dr. Martin Westwood is a coffee owner of two award-winning company called True Brew Gourmet Coffee and South Isle Coffee. He also teach a lot of MBA program. He loved to showcase some how to operate a coffee business in Southeast Asia and to provide a really good example to the students. So next interview, I will ask him 3 questions related to COVID-19, and I believe all of you can benefit from this interview. So the first question I would love to ask, what is the significant challenge?
Thank you, Prof. Chen. I think in my experience, I have to couch it in terms of Philippines and more specifically Southern Philippines. So my answers will reflect that kind of viewpoint. So I guess for me, the challenges fall in 3 specific areas. Producers, roasters, and then your retailer and coffee house purveyor. So in terms of dealing with the major challenges of COVID, each of those faces their own sets of challenges. So on the producer side, we have yet to actually see the impact because the coffee harvest is coming in July and early August. So we don't really have data on exactly how that's going to be impacted. But we do know a couple of things related to producers. First, the government has plans to allow farmers to bring product from the farm to the market. So they do have policies in place even under general quarantine, to allow those farmers to bring products to market. So that's a good thing. They've already thought through that aspect of it. The other aspect is workers also can obtain passes to actually do the actual jobs in the fields. Now, most businesses within the cities are actually asked to stay closed except for essential services. But farming and food-related industries are considered essential services. So on the producer side, it's going to be an understanding of whether or not those farmers can jump through all the hoops to get the proper permits for their workers and the passes to get their product from farm to market. So that is kind of the limited side of it on the producer side. And I don't think it's altogether difficult challenges on their end of it. But the more difficult challenges fall on the roaster and the actual retailer. The coffee house. So I'd like to focus on those in particular. So for roasters, it's a little bit of a dual phenomenon going on, actually. You have a real drop-off in retail buying because the coffee houses aren't buying as much from roasters as they did in the past. So that you're seeing is a huge drop in roasters' operations and income. However, on the flip side of that, that doesn't mean people don't want to keep drinking coffee. So coffee drinkers are reaching out directly to roasters now to obtain beans directly from roasters themselves. So they're kind of bypassing their regular coffee house experience because the coffee houses are closed, but they're able to get their coffee from the roaster. So the roaster is actually seeing an increase in their direct sales to the public, but a decrease in their sales to their typical retail outlets that they'd be selling to. So it's a bit of a mixed bag from the roaster point of view. So on the producer side, not too many challenges. The roaster side, a mixed bag of challenges. On the retail coffee house side, it's a very challenging scene because the first 2.5, 3 months, all establishments had to remain closed. So there was no ability to do takeout, no delivery or anything like that. It was literally a cessation of operations. So that was a huge challenge for especially young coffee houses that really require a lot of business to basically repay loans or to maintain their inventory, that sort of thing. More established coffee houses can kind of ride it out a little bit better. But even now, with easing of restrictions, there's only limited takeout, limited delivery. And in our situation, we've seen a drop of about 80 to 90% of sales. So you can see that's an incredibly large decrease in your revenue stream to keep your operations going. So I think on the retail side, on the coffee house side, in the Philippines, it's a tremendous challenge, but not just for coffee, for most restaurant-related businesses as well, most food and beverage-related industries.
Yeah, so what's the strategy of the industry to cope with this situation?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a similar phenomenon going on, I think, globally in that regard. Because of the shutdowns, people have had to innovate in terms of how do they get their product. Even if you can't have that social experience in the coffee house, how do you get it to the consumer regardless? So you are seeing a surge in coffee houses wanting to use apps like Food Panda or Grab Delivery. But we've been finding that those apps, the charges related to them are exorbitant, put it to you that way. So there's a little bit of innovation going on around that because basically a lot of people in the food and beverage space are saying the charges asked by the apps are larger than the actual profit that we make on the delivery, right? So there's no point in actually following through with that kind of a platform. So in the Philippines, we're starting to see groups of restaurants, groups of cafes starting to hire their own contract driver. So rather than actually using an app service, you take your orders basically directly at each participating outlet. And then we'd have contact with a shared driver that would actually do the deliveries for us. So it's the same concept as using a food delivery app service, but rather than using the actual platform, the e-platform that people would use, we actually take it into our own hands. And we work directly with the driver. So we're actually seeing increased cooperation in terms of competition as well. You're starting to see different, normally competitive companies pooling resources to actually overcome this particular challenge at this time. So it's kind of an interesting concept because you're seeing the cooperative angle of things. So that's one aspect of it too. But you're also seeing changes in terms of how the companies are asking people perhaps to have bundles in terms of their ordering, not just order one coffee, you order a bundle of drinks to make the trip worthwhile. Or in terms of getting people to, develop basically groupings of orders so that you wouldn't just be going into one particular area on a one-off basis. You kind of consolidate orders to an area. So you are seeing those sorts of things happening. But you're also seeing things behind the scenes that I don't think people realize that happen within the coffee cafe experience scene. So people are asking landlords for reduced rents because if you can't have people coming in, you can't be paying the same high rents because your foot traffic is down. So you're starting to see more cooperation, hopefully. I mean, we've had a good experiences in our area, but you're starting to see behind the scenes things like that happen. But there's also a negative side too, because staffing levels have dropped considerably. So you're seeing a lot of staff that you cannot carry at this moment in time, a reduced amount of people. So those are the things that go on behind the scene that you do to try and limit the kind of overheads that you have. So that's all going on at the same time. You've got little elements to try and save on costs, other elements to work on cooperating with other merchants. So these things are evolving over time.
Yeah, so do you believe that we can upgrade our industry in this time?
Absolutely. Obviously, this is going to be country specific too, because different countries are going to have different lockdown rules. And even within countries, we're starting to see some areas open up and other hotspot areas clamp down. So it's kind of a really a great amount of uncertainty right now. So if you were to ask me, I would say definitely not open right now. And that's not to say you should never open a coffee house. It's just the degree of uncertainty right now is very high. And you're starting to see actually a lot of cafes closing because they couldn't withstand the 3-month basically period of no sales. So some people would look at that and say, great, this is an opportunity, less competition, I can get in there right now. I don't have to worry about competing against some other players. Let's go for it. I would just still caution against that simply because there's so many unknowns still going on that it's just difficult to assess whether or not now is the right time to jump in, especially if you're starting to see, like you said, concern of a second wave coming as well. So there's a lot of uncertainty to the point that I would not recommend it, but that doesn't mean you don't do anything. I think that's a perfectly good time to actually work on your business plan, work with understanding how suppliers are getting through this really difficult period of time right now. So it's actually a golden opportunity to find out at the bare minimum how producers and retailers are dealing with challenges right now. And you can build that into your business plan. Many business plans, I think, are very optimistic about what things could be like going forward. And this whole pandemic has actually caused people to reflect a little bit more on what is possible in this space.
Thank you, Dr. Andy. So next guest speaker, I would love to introduce Professor Joliffe. And Joliffe has research interest in the intersection of culture and tourism, especially in coffee and tea tourism. She has published a lot of articles and books related to this topic. If you want to know more about coffee and tea tourism, I would suggest you to start to read her books. So next part, I will also interview her about the influence of COVID-19 on tourism operations. So the first question is still, what is the challenges the industry faced in this pandemic?
So there have been many challenges, but I'm going to look at a couple here. I think the first challenge is with the COVID-19 and coffee and tea is that the supply chain has been affected to some extent. So for example, in some countries where there have been lockdowns, has impacted the production. And even when they've been able to start again, because of social distancing, they can only do it with a lesser workforce. So one place where the effects have been extreme have been in Darjeeling in India, because the lockdown came just as they were harvesting the spring tea that we call the first flush, which is the most valuable tea. So that's where they make a lot of their money. So they lost a lot of that harvest. And I know even in the coffee producing countries, they have been affected. The second thing in the supply chain is the delivery has been affected. So, you know, it's taken longer for any coffee or tea that's harvested to reach the destination.
So what's the strategy this industry use to cope with this situation?
Well, yes, there are a lot of strategies. And maybe first, before we talk strategies, we should look at the consumption side.
Yeah.
Because we know there's been a big change with people around the world staying home during due to COVID-19. There's been a big change in consumption from, you know, previously we had cafes and the coffee culture. We would go to a cafe because of the atmosphere. Yeah. But now there's a big increase in home consumption. And so the industry has really pivoted to more innovative practices such as, well, home delivery in some areas. In the area that I'm in Canada, some cafes were still allowed to do takeout, you know, not to have people sitting in their cafes. So they've got various strategies. If we look at, well, what's happening with Starbucks in North America, Starbucks has pivoted to using apps, keeping their drive-thrus open. And as a whole result of the COVID-19 situation, they're actually going to reduce their footprint in North America. So they're going to have smaller stores, fewer stores. They're actually going to close 200 stores in Canada. So it really has forced these businesses to change very quickly. There's previously coffee and tea tourism, which is a really small niche, you know, people traveling to experience coffee or tea where it's produced. Previously, that was international tourism. Now, as tourism starts to open up in some regions and countries, we're probably going to see domestic tourism versus international. So, for example, the region that I'm in New Brunswick in Canada, we've had a relatively low incidence of COVID-19 because we have a small population and we're a little bit isolated. And our borders to other provinces have been closed, but they've just announced an Atlantic travel bubble, which is for the 4 Atlantic provinces here. So Newfoundland and Labrador, Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick. So people, I think, will start to go back to coffee shops.
So do you believe that we can upgrade our industry?
Definitely. The other thing that has happened is that there's been more of an online presence. So the coffee and tea industry themselves have been using this for a lot of webinars. And on June 11th was the first World Tea Day declared by the United Nations. So the Tea and Herbal Association of Canada ran an 11-hour, they called it their SOFA Summit. They ran an 11-hour live on YouTube event where they interviewed people all over the world in the tea business and the tea industry, you know, people that you only, you read their books, exactly. We know that tourism always recovers, but it will, if we think back to we think back to SARS or the big tsunami in Asia. It's just going to be different. People are going to be more cautious. They may even value the experience they're going to have at the destination more, right? Because they haven't been able to do it in recent months. So I think it will just take time. And I forgot to mention internet sales of coffee and tea have jumped You know, I think in most countries, internet sales and grocery sales. So people are having more time to explore coffee and tea and to try different drinks at home.
So what's the advice you want to offer to the students and scholars?
Well, I think first of all, the students wanting to research in this area have to realize that it's really only a very small niche. So it's part of what I would call culinary heritage tourism. So they need to have a good understanding of culinary tourism and heritage tourism and why people travel. And obviously it's going to be important for them to do field work. So they are, you know, they are going to have to take account social distancing and maybe they're going to have to do field work closer to home.
Thank you, Andy. So that's the all interviews I have.
Okay, Li-HsinChen, thank you very much. Those were excellent. We appreciate all the effort you have put together for putting together your presentation. And not only that, you're the first person to bring 2 international speakers, and you did an excellent job getting them to talk about the coffee and tea the tourism industry, and also for promoting research in this area. We have a few more things we have to cover today, but I'm going to ask Alan and Perry to come in and give their closing comments and about coffee and tea tourism.
Fantastic. Just while we're waiting for Perry, Dr. Andy, well done, Li-Hsin. Thank you very much for a very, very interesting presentation, and certainly a number of facts and figures that I didn't understand about the coffee or the tea industry for that matter. So I'm going to be drinking coffee a very different way to what I might have drank it this morning in the future, and I look forward to that. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your collection of guest speakers as well.
Absolutely. And, you know, as I said at the beginning, I'm a real tea and coffee kind of fan. And I think tea and coffee also has got a lot of cultural aspects to it, to how you've grown up. And it's come and gone. And in the old days, coffee houses were actually the big thing in England. And then tea came in, particularly from India. You heard about Darjeeling. And the influence of Chinese tea, Indian teas have now been taken to Africa. Coffee has grown in certain locations. There's a whole range of things about that. So it's really quite fascinating area of this. So thank you so much for sharing that with us today.
Thank you very much. And thank you. And now we're going to move. We do have a few minutes left, but we have a few things to cover. So again, our thanks to you for your efforts. We do highly recommend people do some send you some articles about coffee and tea tourism. And if anyone is ever in Taiwan, they have to visit Kaohsiung University of Hospitality and Tourism. It's a wonderful institution, and they have some of the most unique laboratories we've seen. You do have a tea and coffee room, I believe, and you also have a smell room. I'll never forget the aroma. You have a room. So if you ever get
That's right.
Please go. So a round of applause for our guests. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well done, well done.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Before we end today's show, we do have to go through a couple things. We're going to end our background challenge today with the winner, but just to refresh everybody's memory, this was our winner of the funniest Zoom background. So we always thought the roller coaster one was a great idea. Our next winner was a creative background, and this is the one that we know that Dr. Perry Hobson has been watching very closely because he's been upgrading his slides and looking good. But now we have to make a decision for the winner. We have 2 submissions that made it to the finalists, and we now need your help because we have this is the before for the background improvement, and this is from Rexter Laurel from LPU, and then this is his after. Okay, which is, well, you know, obviously the cruise industry, and he's got a little Corona. Oh, very nice. But we also have to say that we do have another one that is very, very close and very, very tough to decide. I think these 2 guys will work. But as you can tell, this one, he has his green background too, and this is his background improvement. So this is a very good travel thing with the thing. So what are we going to do? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to have one more poll today, and it's going to be up to our audience to select the ultimate winner of our background challenge. So get ready to vote. I'm going to launch the poll right now, and we will let this poll decide the winner of our first background challenge. So everybody start playing. Oh, we see the votes are starting in.
It's going
This
to
is
be
a really
close, I
tough
think.
decision, Dr. Andy.
I
This is
know.
a very tough decision.
That's what I decided.
Some very, very good backgrounds there.
But you don't realize how
That's
close
right.
it's coming right now. It's very close. Let's see.
Oh.
Fantastic.
I did the session on crucive, so I know where my vote's going to go. But you know, I want to see where the others are coming in from this.
We have 20. Let's see. We have a few. I'm going to give it for 10 more seconds. No, let's see. No, we got 4 more people voting. Okay, 69% of the votes are in. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to give it 15 more seconds, and we're going to count it down. Here we go. 10.
Ooh. Come on, everybody, vote. Come on, give you
Come on, a few seconds to finish.
3,
You can do it.
1, and the poll is now over, and the results are in. It was very, very close, and I'm going to read you. There was 28 for Rexter Laurel and 23 for I Like Them Both. So it was so close, but it looks, sir, you are the winner of our first background challenge. Congratulations. So
Excellent.
Congratulations, Rexter. Well done.
Yeah.
And now we need to thank our academic partners. Perry, maybe you could help us with that.
Absolutely. So once again, we'd really like to thank all our academic partners and the support they've afforded us, and particularly the students and staff from those different organizations who have participated and continue to join our webinars each week. So particular thanks to my colleagues at Sunway University, but of course to our friends at LPU, the University of Santo Tomas in the Philippines, to our friends at the Macau institutions that are members of the Educators Association, of course to National Kaohsiung University of Hospitality and Tourism, and again a big thank you to Li-HsinChen for joining us today to talk about coffee, and to Heli in Higher Education Leadership Institute in Australia. Thank you again all very much. We really do appreciate your support.
And I think we should once again just thank all the students that have participated in the background challenge, not only this week, but in the previous weeks. Congratulations to everybody, and some really, really interesting and fantastic thoughts there. Thank you for contributing. Thank you for putting your best thoughts forward, and for some very, very interesting backgrounds. Well done to everybody.
Fabulous.
And Alan, maybe you could tell us about next week's topic, which is a very interesting topic also.
Absolutely. Following on from a presentation we ran not so long ago, a little bit about Las Vegas. Well, next week we've got another very interesting speaker, Dr. Jerry Gruso, who I spent just a little bit of time with on Zoom probably about an hour ago, or just over an hour ago today, where he was talking about the net effects of the tourism industry prior to COVID-19 and now post-COVID-19 on Hawaii. So we're looking forward to an extremely fascinating presentation, the dramatic changes that have happened in another very, very popular tourism destination across the globe. Jerry's looking forward to joining us, and we're really looking forward to one of those fantastic upbeat sessions. So stay tuned, everybody, and join us next week for a really good presentation.
That's right. And as we've heard we'll be hearing from Hawaii, we've heard from Macau, we've heard about Las Vegas, and we're going to be finding what's happening in other destinations around the world as we go forward in our series of webinars, because obviously this time is hitting many destinations in different ways, and learning about what happens in different parts of the world, what's working, what's not working, how things are changing. It's going to leave us all much better informed to deal with our more localized situations.
And that concludes this week's 30-minute talks. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you again, Dr. Chen from National Kaohsiung University of Hospitality and Tourism. Alan, Perry, we look forward to seeing you all next week for an exciting discussion on Hawaii. And that's all, and signing out from the Philippines.
Yep, and bye from Malaysia, and looking forward to being able to say aloha next week as we join Jerry from Hawaii. Alan.
Goodbye from Australia, everybody, and keep safe. And thanks again, Li-Hsin, for your fantastic presentation today. See you next week.